is a true horrifying story. This story took place in Kuwait in the year 1997. Weddings back then were very traditional in Arabic countries, and they still are. A wedding bridal party would take place in the bride's house before the actual wedding day. In these bridal parties, usually a female band group are hired to play music. You know, ones that play these ancient Arabic music, the ones with the Arabic drums. A very famous female band group were very known back in the 90s named Tagagat Noura. They got a call one night for an inquiry to play at a bride's party. They negotiated the price, prepared for the party, and then got the address. On the bridal's day, this is Noura by the way, her and her team finally reached the house. The house looked very nice. It had many lights outside. There were children playing, women all dressed up. They were greeted by the bride's mother. They were taken to the guest room so they can prepare before playing the music. At 9 p.m., Noura and her team start playing, and the ladies go wild and start dancing. They did not stop playing the music till 12 midnight. They asked the bride's mom for a short break, but she refused. She told them that she would pay them extra if they continued playing the music. So they keep playing for an extra 2 hours, and they get shocked at how these ladies don't get tired from all this dancing. At one point, the electricity goes completely off, and then they were ordered to continue playing so they can send someone to check the electricity. So Noura and her team continue playing in pitch darkness. The way these women were dancing was kind of off and strange. It was kind of scary in a way that this band has never seen before. So this is what happened next. One of the artists fainted on stage. They immediately stopped playing, picked her up and took her to the guest room. They tried to wake her up, and then she did and started crying from fear. They asked her what was going on, what happened, and she responded by saying one of the women that were dancing had legs that did not look like human legs. They looked like goat legs. And Noura immediately knew what kind of beings were inside this house. They slowly snuck outside through the window and started running for their lives. While they were running through the neighborhood, there was a random guy that was walking. He stopped them and yelled at why they were shouting in the middle of the night. They said that they were playing music for that big house and an incident has happened. And the man asked, "What house?" The ladies pointed at the house again. The man looked at the house and told them that this house has been abandoned and left empty for 10 years and that no one lives in that house anymore. They peeked at the house again, and there were no cars, no people, no lights, no children. It was a plain, abandoned, empty house. They thought to themselves that, were they all dreaming the same thing? Was it all just an imagination that they all imagined at the same time? These were jinns that they were playing for. This is in fact a true story. And this is the real picture that was taken inside that wedding. This is a true horrifying story, part 2. In 2012, a video has been released online by a security manager at a hotel. The video took place in a Wingate hotel in the state of Illinois on September 14th, 2003. Other than all the ghost caught on camera videos that were published on YouTube, this is by far one of the real ones. According to him, people began calling in noise complaints to the front desk, with reports of loud screaming coming from the second floor, particularly room 209. So John, one of the security officers, goes there to check that room. And while he was going, there were 2 other people from his team on standby. He reaches close to that room and immediately hears screaming coming from inside. As his team tells him that there was nobody that checked in that room on that day.
It's room 209. Amy says nobody's checked into that room, and there's reports of screaming coming from that room. Amy, he's on his way down there right now. What's going on, John? There's no one checked into that room. There should be nobody in there. Wait 1 second, John. Amy, are you there? John, just wait. We're going to get a hold of the police. So, I would wait for the police, John. Amy, John's just going to enter the room real quick just to check, make sure, see what's going on. Wait more. John? John, are you there?
Now we all noticed that the lights outside started to flicker, but did you notice the figure that left that room? This is a true horrifying story, part 3. This story took place in Dubai in the year 2007. The story I'm about to tell you was told to me by the actual characters that went through this terror, and it was never shared online nor disclosed to the public until now. An Emirati married couple with 3 kids lived in a villa in Jumeirah 1. Their youngest son, Ahmed, at the time was 8 years old. Ahmed would tend to have horrible dreams every night, and he would complain about this to his family. But it seemed kind of okay at the time because children in his age group tend to have nightmares. But Ahmed's dreams started to pick up their intensity a few weeks later. They knew it got more serious when Ahmed started having sleep paralysis. He would feel like there is something with him in his room. Later on one of these nights, the bad dreams he had were no longer dreams. Something would wake Ahmed up during the night. He would have no control over his body as he gets out of bed. He would walk out of his room, go downstairs to the kitchen, and go close to the back door. He would open the door. As his foot leaves the door, he would gain control over his body again. He was certain that it was not him sleepwalking. He was conscious throughout the whole trip. After gaining control over his body, he would run to his mom crying from fear. She slept next to him later that night till the next morning. The next day, he would sleep, wake up, and the same exact routine would repeat. Goes downstairs, goes to the kitchen. As he steps outside, he gains control over his body. This would happen to Ahmed almost every night for 2 years straight, to the point where Ahmed got used to it. Though that's not the freaky part about this whole story. After Ahmed's reoccurring event, Ahmed's mom decided to lock the kitchen door and hide the keys. She wanted to test this out on one of these nights. So later that night, Ahmed sleeps, wakes up, goes downstairs to the kitchen, grabs the doorknob, and there you have it. The door is unlocked. The door locking process would take place every single night, but the door will always somehow be unlocked, like something is trying to get Ahmed out of that house at night. Eventually, Ahmed turned 10 or 11 years old a few years later, and thankfully, these paranormal night walks have stopped. He is 23 years old today, and nothing has happened after that last time 12 years ago. But the story still haunts him till this day, wondering why and who was trying to get Ahmed out of that house. This is a true horrifying story, part 4. There are a couple of paranormal spots in the UAE that are known to be haunted, such as the Pan Emirates Tunnel, the Khail Gate building, the ghost town in Ras Al Khaimah, the Jumeirah house. But by far, the most haunted place, the most place that made visitors' spines shiver, with the most recorded paranormal incidents, is Al Qasimi Palace in Ras Al Khaimah. This palace was built by the late Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Hamad Al Qasimi in 1985. Since the late 1980s, this palace was already abandoned with all the furniture inside. A man was called to come into this palace 20 years ago. He was a little bit worried because he knows about the supernatural spirits that roam its halls. He had a maintenance work order to work in one of the rooms in that palace since the palace was sold to someone else. On the first day of his jobs, things such as his tools would be found misplaced. He would take something out of his bag and then leave, come back, and that tool is back in the bag again. These few things were only confusing him. He did not think otherwise. A few days later, these chandeliers would rock right and left while there was no wind in that room. In some occasions, this man would hear children's voices inside the palace and ignore it for hours. Through reflections, he would see glimpses of children staring at him for a split second. He was reporting these cases to the people in charge, but no actions were taken. A week later, this man would see furniture being tossed around like toys in front of his eyes. Entities that have intense amount of power that can manage to toss couches and tables across a whole room. He felt completely uninvited and decided to leave that work order. On that same year, holy men would come, read prayers, and cleanse the palace. No serious reports were made later on. But till this very day, the voices are still heard by some visitors that these beings don't like. And these same visitors would witness what seems to be like children would stare at them from the windows as they walk out. This is a true horrifying story, part 5. This story took place in Saudi Arabia in 2016. There are many known religious scholars and Islamic sheikhs in Arabic countries, including the UAE. Each of them are experienced in different things. Some are known to be muftis, some are known to be dream interpreters, and some are known to be raqis. Raqis are Islamic scholars that do ruqya shar'iyya on people. They're also called exorcists. They would cleanse bodies from demons and black magic. One very known Muslim exorcist in Saudi Arabia, I would feel more comfortable not saying his name. He used to cleanse almost 10 people every day for the past 15 years of his life, and he would not take a single penny for the service that he provides. He used to do this only for God and to help the ones in need for cleansing. One day, a possessed Arabic man that has been suffering for years had his appointment with that sheikh that day. He had many bruises and scratches all over his body. The man sits down and the sheikh introduces the process of what's going to happen and tells the man not to worry. The sheikh had 4 other men with him in case things go bad. The sheikh starts to recite a few verses from the Quran to test the man's body language. His fingers started to twitch as his head tilted down. He slowly starts to recite the ruqya, and the man's fingers all start rotating back abnormally. 20 minutes later, the sheikh stops for a moment. The man stares at him with a smile and asks him a question in Russian. Now the whole session is recorded, and the cleansing procedure took hours with a lot of shouting in Russian from that man. The man swore that he does not speak a single word in Russian after he woke up. He left, and he had to come back the following day for his next session. The sheikh was notified the next day that this man has passed away from a stroke. On that same afternoon, they proceeded with the burial and the funeral for that man. A week later, the sheikh took the tapes to translate what has been said in Russian. This was the translation. I am in love with this man. I will take his life. I will take his life. This is a true horrifying story, part 6. This story took place in Dubai in the year 1996, and the real characters of this story are Emirati women. Back in the day, and actually till this day, there's a game called a Ouija board. In Arabic, it's also known as Ouija. It involves a group of players playing in the dark, burn sage, light up candles. They place their fingers on a peck and then ask Ouija questions. Now there are many videos on YouTube of people playing this game, and every time people play it, they freak out or things go wrong. You would ask a yes or no question, or a question that involves one answer, with everybody's fingers placed on the peck, and the peck will move on its own. When you buy the board, it comes with some sort of ritual that the players must read. I do not advise anyone under any circumstance to play this game. The Ouija board is not a joke. You can do your own research. A group of girls in 1996 decided to play this game. One of their friends brought back the board from the UK after her recent trip. They laughed about this game and doubted that it works. They meet up on a Friday night in one of the girls' houses, light up the candles, and start reading the rituals. They close the light, place their fingers on the peck, and start asking a few questions. But the peck doesn't move. They keep trying for another 5 minutes, and still nothing happened. Until one of the girls asked, "What can we do to make this game work?" The peck slowly moves to the letter Q, U, I, E, and then T, which spells the word quiet. They knew that they had to be quiet in order to play this game. They all freaked out when the peck started moving. One of the girls decided to leave, but her friends forced her to stay and play. They started asking yes and no questions to verify this entity's knowledge. Questions such as, "Are you real? Yes. Do you live with us on Earth? No." Questions kept going and the peck was moving all around. Until one of the girls asked, "Are you going to hurt us?" Yes. The same girl asked, "Are you alone?" No. Because it seemed that that first entity was friendly, but the one that is with that entity is not friendly. Now the rules of the game is do not move your fingers from this piece. 2 girls freaked out after that answer and took their hands off. The candles blew out. All of the girls ran out the room and went home terrified, except the last girl that left that room, who later then threw the board game in the trash before completing it. Her personality changed after that day. She's always quiet, barely laughs or smiles. She was not social anymore, her facial features started to change, and she cut herself off of her social circle. The girl is still around till this day, but no one knows why and who made her permanently change like that. This is a true horrifying story, part 7. This story took place in the UAE in the year 2021. Yes, this year. Hamza, a 19-year-old young man, was out camping and barbecuing with his friends in one of the deserts in the country. After finishing all their activities, they were enjoying the cool breeze in the dark, and then they sat around the fire. It was story time. They told each other stories of paranormal activities they have experienced. The stories kept coming till midnight, when the boys realized it was late and time to go home. Hamza was the only one with a driver's license back in early 2021, so he had to drop his friends back home. Some of them lived in Mirdif, so they asked Hamza to stop at a house over there that is abandoned. Some rumors in the neighborhood move around and say that this house is haunted. The house looked very creepy and old. It was half broken and had a bush that was growing on the top. Nobody was spooked out. Hamza and one of his friends go inside and start knocking on the gate. They wouldn't stop knocking and laughing about the whole thing, until one of the friends told them that it was not a good idea to disturb the demons, but they thought it was funny. They hopped back in the car, driving down the same street, laughing off what they did to that house. Hamza had to drive another block away to drop one of his friends that lived in Mirdif as well. The street they were driving in was so dark, so Hamza tells the boys he's gonna switch the beam on. And one of the boys in the back says, "Imagine a ghost pops up as soon as you open the light." Hamza giggled and switches the beam on. And Hamza froze. He sees an old lady in front of the car with thick skin, pale as paper, wearing a full white dress and had very long hair. A real jinn stares at Hamza and Hamza's friend, the one that was back with him at the house knocking on the door. Hamza and his friend started breathing heavy. Their legs started shaking from intense fear. They were locked tight in their seats and no words were able to come out of their mouths. The creepiest part is the other friends weren't able to see anything. They were confused to what their friends were seeing. He turns the blinkers on and the lady vanishes out of nowhere. On that same night, Hamza drops everyone home and goes straight to bed. In his sleep on that same night, Hamza had nightmares of that same figure killing him. He woke up from fear and told his friend the nightmare story. The same friend with Hamza that saw that jinn had the exact same dream of that lady in white killing him. And since that day, they never messed around with any house that was abandoned. This is how jinns warn you. A'udhu billah. Gratefully, that was just a pinch from the jinns. They never haunted them again. This is a true horrifying story, part 8. This story took place with a Muslim man in the early 2000s in a small village in Sudan. To Muslim and non-Muslim viewers, let me explain what a ghost is in our religion. In Islam, we do not believe in people's spirits. The beings that haunt us are not bad souls of dead people. We refer to them as jinns. They are paranormal beings that live among us, but on a different plane, if that makes sense. They live in their own world. They get married to one another, males and females. There are old jinns, there are younger ones, there are good ones and also bad ones. The bad ones, who are the disbelievers, are known as the shaitans, in English, Satans. There are Muslim jinns, there are Christian jinns, there are weak ones, strong ones, dumb ones, and very smart ones. There are different types of jinns, such as the Afrit, the Khubth and the Khaba'ith, the Ghols, and the shapeshifters. The shapeshifting jinns have the ability to completely shapeshift into human form or specific animals, such as black cats, lizards, spiders, and more. In their world, they can see us, but we cannot see them. A Sudanese man that lives and studies in Europe visited his family in one of the Islamic occasions in Sudan. He's not really a big fan of the area he lives in, knowing that a few spots there are haunted by jinns. He has bad childhood memories of seeing figures, listening to kids playing late at night, and hearing strange animal noises. For the first time ever, this man might have seen a jinn closest to its real form, but not quite. The only way you can see a jinn is if the jinn shapeshifted. And sometimes the shapeshifting process is not quite accurate. The animal or the human form might have some faults. On one of the late nights, this man was outside smoking a cigarette, and he started hearing stray dogs barking. Minute by minute, the barks would get more aggressive. He sees a strange looking black animal that looks like a dog. He notices the stray dogs around this animal are barking at this dog specifically. The animal was moving towards him slowly, staring deep into his eyes. The man froze from fear and drops his cigarette. As the animal kept getting closer, it started looking different step by step. Its size started increasing, its eyes began diluting, and its arms was getting bulkier. He wanted to say the prayers to make it go away, but something was stopping him. This animal kept coming a few feet closer, and then the man saw it clearly. It had arms that looked like human arms, a face of a goat, and a body of a bulky dog. The animal stood up on both legs, and the man shouted the prayer. It drops down and shapeshifts into a small black cat and sprints away. Do jinns actually look like that, the way this author described? Or was that a shapeshifting fault? This is a true horrifying story, part 9. This story took place in the International Indian School in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in the year 2003. Asim, a 16-year-old Indian student in that school, born and raised in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. On a normal school day, Asim was walking back home alone from school as he lived 5 minutes away. He would walk alone almost every day. It was a hot, sunny day and the roads were empty. Asim suddenly realized that there is someone or something walking right behind him. He sees a very tall woman, about 7 feet tall, covered in black and wearing the niqab, a very common attire that women wear in Saudi Arabia. He just took a glimpse and then turned back very quickly without having any other thoughts about that woman, and she was about 150 meters away. As he walked, he asked himself, why was that woman very tall and walked boldly like a wrestler? In that split second, Asim decided to turn his head for one last quick look, and the woman was right behind him. She was able to cover 150 meters in a few seconds. This boy's heart drops. He started walking faster without looking back, as his house was only 50 feet away. He did not want to run because she would know that he's scared. He reaches outside, grabs the handle of the gate, feels safer, and immediately turns around. And no one was there. The entire area was completely deserted, like no one has ever been there before. Now that there are no connecting lanes around the building that Asim lives in, the woman had nowhere to turn. But where is she? It terrified him that she vanished out of nowhere, given the fact that she also followed him 100 meters plus in a few seconds. He just froze and stood there in shock for a whole minute after what just happened. He goes through the gate, turns his head one last time, and there she is, 20 feet away from the gate, staring through his soul with a smile. He was able to tell that she was smiling from the lifted eyelids from the rear ends. As he froze in his spot, staring at this thing, it removes its veil slowly, and the boy sees not a man, not a woman, but a beast-like face, staring at Asim through the gate. After this incident, Asim never walked to school alone for weeks. Until this very day, Asim being in his 30s right now, not knowing what the hell that thing was, and why were the roads completely empty during the time span of this incident. This is a true horrifying story, part 10. This story took place in the year 2019 in Al Ain City, the United Arab Emirates. Mira, a 17-year-old Emirati girl, back then had a 14-year-old sister and a 20-year-old brother that was a police cadet in training. On one evening, Mira's mom was upset with something she did, so she grounded both her and her sister. She took away all their electronic devices, phones, iPads, headphones. On that specific day, her elder brother was reserved back in the training camp, and her father was in Abu Dhabi for work. He only comes back on weekends. So no one was home but Mira, her sister, their mom, and younger siblings. At midnight, the girls decided to go to sleep, so they switched the lights off. As Mira's eyes started dozing off, her younger sister jumped on her bed, frightening Mira, and woke her up. "What's wrong?" Mira asked her sister. As she was crying, she responded by saying, "Something moved my bed." Shivers went down Mira's spine as she heard her sister say that. She stood up and opened the lights. Nothing was in the room. A few minutes later, they hear someone whistling outside their room door. That same person whistling outside the door goes inside the brother's room and slams the door shut. Now they can't see who it is. They can only hear what's going outside in the hallway. They looked at each other scared and confused as their elder brother was not home. A moment later, the same door outside opens and the whistling continues. It sounded very familiar to these girls, but they were certain that their brother is not home, so they started panicking. They had no phones, no iPads to call for help. they're grounded, remember? The back and forth steps of that person outside the room kept going for a solid 1 hour, and the whistling would continue. Doors outside the hallway would open and close. Mira remembered that she had an old laptop in her room. She was able to get a hold of one of her friends from school, and she made her call her mom. Her mom eventually showed up, and she found no one inside the house. After that night, they slept in their mom's room for weeks. Until this very day, they still live in that same house. And on some occasions, a few paranormal events would still happen in their home. This is a true dark web story. Two best friends, Vivian and Bella. They're sophomores studying programming in college. In their second year of college, they started having weekly assignments that were done at home. And Bella was the only one in class that was getting straight A's in these assignments. Vivian, which is Bella's best friend, wanted to ace these tests so bad. So she asked Bella to help her out. But Bella spilled the truth, telling Vivian that she never studied for these assignments. She had a guy from the deep web that was experienced in programming, and she pays him so little and he provides her the assignment answers. Vivian was kind of freaked out because she heard so many stories about the deep web. A few days later, the professor announced the next assignment date. Vivian went back home the same day and asked Bella how to get in touch with that same man. So Bella sent her the Onion web link, and that web link took her to a site that has a chat box with that man. So Vivian got in touch with that man as well, and surely she started acing all her tests with Bella. They were known as the smartest girls in that school. So weeks passed by, and Vivian sent questions to that man from the deep web for her next assignment. The man refused to take that payment for that specific assignment. Then he asked for another form of payment, so Vivian got confused and then offered to double the amount. The man still refused and insisted on taking inappropriate pictures from Vivian as a form of payment. The thing that scared Vivian was, how did the man know that she was a girl? Name, age, gender, and location are all supposedly anonymous on that website. But he somehow found out a few things about Vivian. She immediately logged out and quit contacting that man. The next day, Vivian goes to class and asks Bella if the man did the same thing to her. Bella said yes, I was already sending him inappropriate pictures regularly. And that same night, Vivian was at home having dinner. She got many calls from an unknown number. She picked up, and it was that man. And he told her that she has no choice but to send the pictures. Vivian eventually hung up the phone, and then an hour later, she received a text from another unknown number. She opened that video, and she saw Bella tied up on her bed, dead. There was a text right under the video saying, "You're next." She freaked out and then contacted the authorities. The police investigation took many months. Vivian eventually dropped out of that school and then transferred to another state. The scary thing behind all of this is that this man, that's a specialized programmer from the deep web, was never found, and he's still out there. This is a true dark web story. In parts 1 and 2 of when I explained what the dark web is, I showed you guys a website that was on Tor that was taken down by the FBI in 2014 called Silk Road. Silk Road was an online shopping platform for illegal stuff. It was pretty much like Amazon, but for the black market. The story I'm about to tell you now involves Silk Road. A teenager named Charlie was addicted to psychedelics. Psychedelics are types of hard drugs that are legal in some countries but illegal in most countries. Charlie used to be in contact with his regular drug dealers from the dark web. One day he ran out of stock and he contacted the guys that he always does. But most of them were offline, so he assumed they might have been arrested. So Charlie decided to find a new drug dealer for himself. He stumbled across a guy on Silk Road that sells the same substances that he takes for around the same price. He got in touch with that man and gave him his address. The drug dealer asked for additional requests, so Charlie requested a disguised package. Since he lives with his mom, he doesn't want his mom to find out. A day later, Charlie receives a text from the drug dealer saying that he is on his way. So Charlie waited outside his house since the weather was not too bad. He got a text 2 hours later saying, "Meet me here instead," with a location address. He was quite upset that he waited for him all this time, but he eventually decided to go. Charlie finally reached that location and saw a black van with a guy wearing a hoodie inside it. He went over to the car, took his drugs, hopped back in his car and drove away. As he was driving back home, he noticed that the same black car was following him. To text the drug dealer asking why he's chasing him, but decided not to. He started driving faster and faster and eventually lost the guy. He started laughing hysterically. but then realized that he sent him his house address the previous day. He quickly reached home, and the first thing he noticed was his mom's car missing. He ran inside the house to see all their electronics missing, all the expensive furnitures were gone, and his mom stabbed dead on the floor. Right next to his mom's body, there was a note that says, "Enjoy the acid." Acid is another term for LSD, the psychedelic drug that Charlie bought. This is a true dark web story. Part 2. Jacob, a 21-year-old that had a very good friend named Steven. Steven was a very nice but quiet guy. He was also very insecure about his face, because his face had serious skin problems, and it was very hard for him to meet new people. He also had a lot of people making fun of him all the time, and that's what made him stay home almost every day. And Jacob was his only friend. Day by day, Jacob started noticing that Steven's emotions were getting darker. He was addicted to caffeine soft drinks all the time, and his appearance was getting worse. One day on the weekend, Steven gave Jacob a call so he can come over and chill and surf through some crazy things on the deep web. Steven told Jacob that he spends hours every day enjoying the stimulating videos on the deep web. He somehow felt like he can escape reality from the deep web. On another day, where Jacob was at Steven's place, Steven showed Jacob this website that he recently found on the deep web. It showed many pictures of people's skins and bones being separated. Jacob was completely disgusted, but Steven found interest in that website. The website offers a service that literally says, "Start a new life. Will make you have a new face." It was some sort of illegal plastic surgery of removing people's faces and transplanting them on clients that wanted them. Jacob was pretty sure that it was a fake site and all of it's a joke, but Steven unfortunately sent an email to the owners of that site. And a few days later, Steven disappeared. It was official, and it was reported that Steven was indeed missing till this day. Years went by, and Jacob still misses Steven very much. Jacob, from his house, started noticing a man that does not look familiar. He comes to his neighborhood once a week, stares at his house from across the road for a few minutes, and then just walks away. That man would regularly come every week and would do the exact same thing, while Jacob notices him from his window every single time. Jacob thought maybe that could have been the former owner of the house he lives in, but that was not the case. Was that Steven showing up with his new face? Because he still misses his friend Jacob.